Get the hell out of here! Get the hell out of here! And these weak Muslims in the West, sending me emails and this, I'm losing my faith and I'm a Hafiz, I'm losing, get the hell out, you were never a strong believer in the first place, you weakling. You're a weakling because you don't know your tradition. You're sitting there watching Netflix and you don't read the books of Islam. That's why you are where you are. That's why you are where you are, you imbecile. 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 Boy! Imbecile.
Hi everyone and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Today I am finally here with a project that is absolutely necessary. The End of Mohammed Hijab. Mohammed Hijab unironically calls himself the A side. He has the gold. He's the heavyweight.
You're coming to me. I'm the A side. I've got the gold. I've got the qualification.
In this video, I will give you numerous examples, some of them incredibly significant, which will reveal Mohammed Hijab to be extremely dishonest, awfully vile, and shockingly incompetent. I will discuss a series of topics that might be disturbing, such as violence, terrorism, suicide, slavery, sexual violence, sexual acts, and more. I will discuss them because our dear friend Mohammed Hijab tends to talk about such matters very frequently.
This man has real problems.
But first off, who is this guy? Mohammed Hijab is a self-proclaimed traditionalist Islamic debater who wants to suck your wife's breasts. I'm sorry, that's what he says. That's a very generous offer, a very kind offer that I'm sure most of us would reject. Mohammed Hijab is a self-proclaimed traditionalist Muslim debater who happens to be very popular among younger Muslims. He is not especially relevant for his ideas and the things that he presents and says, but rather for how loud he is and how aggressive he is, and the fights that he picks with so-called Islamophobes. According to the Sapiens Institute, Mohammed Hijab has a bachelor's degree in politics, a master's degree in history, and a master's degree in Islamic studies, while he has also underwent formal Islamic studies in Quran, Hadith, Usul, and Arabic language in an Islamic seminary, the Shinkiti Institute. I don't even want to know who wrote this. Strangely enough, Mohammed Hijab is a political scientist, comparative religionist, and theological historian who has published works on philosophy of religion, political philosophy, and theology. As you can probably tell, half of these claims make no sense and are just here to bloat Mohammed Hijab's ego. Mohammed Hijab first interacted with me more than a year ago when he posted a 6-hour video which was supposed to be an annihilatory refutation of me. And at the beginning of the video, he challenged me to a debate.
This is an annihilatory response video to a man called Rizvan, who is an apostate from Islam.
The video was so vulgar that YouTube removed it for harassment and bullying, which is something that happens very rarely.
Now this is a despicable character, a cantankerous individual. For the vulgar individuals who follow him and promote him, who are sheep, when you see me and you lock eyes with me, I'll make sure that you come inches away from excreting yourself. You will do nothing but submit, cockroach on the internet.
I rejected and called for common decency if we want to debate. Instead of taking the opportunity, he made a series of very childish tweets. I then made a video calmly mocking him. You are making fun of people's appearances? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? You look like a weird broom. While also leaving the possibility open of having a proper debate under the proper settings and behaviors. Unsurprisingly, he became even dirtier and insulted me, my mother, and my sister in very disturbing ways. I mean, just look at the language here. How long do Muslims want such people to represent them? Instead of pointing the finger at Islam and the Muslim community, a finger he will surely need to fulfill his conjugal obligations, or indeed the incestuous activity he may be engaged in with mommy and sister.
What?
I wonder if inbred Rizvan has attempted to lure his mother into sexual activity. The argument for deformed babies may put him off actual penetration, but what about using his massive nose as the main instrument? I mean, what the hell? This is one of the most popular Muslim apologists of our time, supported by many other popular Muslim apologists who love him. What the hell is going on in this guy's mind that he so explicitly speaks about penetrating your mother or doing it with your nose because you don't like deformed babies? Mohammed Hijab.
The truth is this, is that the people now know what kind of vulgarities come out of this person's mouth.
Disgusting.
What kind of dirty individual
Absolutely
this is.
disgusting.
You are, Alik, dirty individual, sickening human being.
These people would accuse me, an atheist, of being immoral and wicked and weird. I don't carry such things in my mind. I don't use them to attack people. What the hell is wrong with you? It is also weird, of course, that Islamists think they are the ones who can speak about incest. Half a year after all that happened, he contacted me on Twitter, although his initial 6-hour video was supposed to be my annihilation. When I told him that if he wants to discuss Islam, we can have a respectful debate, he then told me that he hates me, which is why he must be allowed to personally attack me. I made that compromise and said that I'm willing to have an online debate, but he never responded. A few weeks later, I made a final challenge, reiterated that this should be a moderated, timed debate hosted by a third-party platform, and that the title would be, "Is Islam the Truth?" Then he finally responded and rejected my challenge, saying that I don't meet his requirements because I don't have an Islamic education. Which is very strange. He initially challenged me in a very sensational way. Then he came to me again and said that we can debate if he is allowed to insult me. And here he is now saying that he won't debate me because I don't meet his requirements.
What the hell? I mean,
since he's a dick to everyone and declares victory when others reject him or ignore him, I did the same thing to him. He then asked his fans whether he should have this online debate, pay attention, online debate with me, and his fans vastly agreed that he should. He made this post in which he suspiciously, explicitly agreed to these 4 conditions. My final conditions, which you see here, did not mention that it is online, because I assumed that that is already a given. When I happily announced that he accepted the debate and even sent his team an email to make the arrangements, he asked for my location and said that I was now trying to squeeze in the online condition to run from him because I'm scared. And then he immediately started insulting me. Then he told me to commit suicide and jump off a high building. He deleted those tweets within minutes, and then he proceeded to attacking me, my wife, and my family, and then insanely harassing other ex-Muslims and their families for weeks, basically everyone else who got involved. I will point out numerous occasions where Mohammed Hijab clearly lied, but this one is very important. Mohammed Hijab publicly claimed here that I was now trying to throw in the online condition because I was scared of him. But Mohammed Hijab knew that this was an online debate. In fact, he explicitly mentioned that himself during the negotiations, just one day before he publicly lied and claimed that I'm now smuggling in the condition because I'm scared of him. A few days later, I had a back and forth with him where he even admitted to me that he actually knew it was an online debate, which means when he publicly asserted that I quickly inserted this new condition because I was scared of him, he deliberately and blatantly lied to everyone, foremost to his own fans and fellow Muslims, to make it look like the enemies of Islam are scared of him. How pathetic, isn't it?
Liar! You're a liar! You're a liar! You're finished already!
And by the way, Mohammed Hijab did bring up that I wouldn't be a physical challenge to him, out of nowhere. And what happened after all that? Adam Saleh sent me a message one day and invited me to their podcast, but he wanted me to join immediately, within an hour. I asked whether it's going to be only Adam Saleh and Slim, and he said yes. So I joined their podcast. The 2 kids kept screaming kid stuff at me, and then a wild Mohammed Hijab appeared and acted as Mohammed Hijab acts. And eventually they kicked me off the chat and declared victory. I thought they would possibly try to trick me and somebody else would appear to argue with me. Honestly, I didn't expect Mohammed Hijab. I didn't think that he would be so pathetic to make a plot with these people, make them lie to me, and put an effort into ambushing me, instead of simply agreeing to an online debate and doing this in a proper setting. With that insecurity of his, it is no wonder that he always resorts to being so loud and arrogant and nearly insane. I mean, who the hell talks like this?
scared, just like David Wood before the debate. Yeah, he was scared. You saw how he was petrified, shaking, just like you. You wouldn't come near me, not even in my proximity. You know you're gonna get corrected, boy. You know that I'm gonna know it from memory, and you're gonna get humiliated, boy. Right, okay. You're nothing, boy. You're finished already. Look at me. Look at me. You know you're done. Liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. You're finished already, boy. You wouldn't try. You wouldn't try. You're hiding, boy. You're hiding. And you know you can't come out and show your face. You're hiding.
That was the backstory. Now, let's finally get to how incompetent Mohammed Hijab is. If you are ready, let's go. Mohammed Hijab repeatedly brags about his deep understanding of political philosophy and science.
I have 4 degrees to my name. You do not have the authority to tell me what you think freedom of speech is.
On Twitter, he repeatedly said that he can insult our loved ones and that we shouldn't complain because we support free speech and offend Islam and Muhammad. And him insulting us and our loved ones is also just free speech. He did the same thing during the podcast. You are making rape implications about my wife. You are making rape threats about my wife.
If you want, you're an 10 minutes, I will be muted. Listen, look, don't worry about insults. Insults are freedom of speech.
He honestly thinks that if I support freedom of speech, then I shouldn't be offended by anything, shouldn't be disturbed by anything. I should be okay, feel good about any kind of speech. Otherwise, I'm a hypocrite.
If you can't manage that, right? If you can't manage that, then you can't manage freedom of speech.
that has nothing to do with freedom of speech. That is not how freedom of speech works. Free speech is about the right to express your opinions freely. I can agree that he can mock me and insult me while also refusing to interact with him unless he communicates properly with me. Being offended or not, decency or not, has nothing to do with freedom of speech. Does freedom of speech mean that you can say whatever you want and nobody should get angry about this?
Well, according to liberal philosophers like John Stuart Mill, in his book on utilitarianism, freedom of speech is only curtailed by the harm principle.
He attempted to sound informed and talked about how free speech means you can express your opinions. But that was not my question. Was that my question? Do you really think that was my question?
What's your question? Just repeat it for yourself.
According to your understanding of freedom of speech, does freedom of speech mean that you can say whatever you want and no one can be angered about it?
No, not whatever you want. There are laws of libel, there are laws of defamation, there are laws of copyright.
That's not the point. Does freedom of speech, according to you, mean that no one can be angry about it? About what you say?
We're angry about you eating and spitting out the Quran, and you and David.
Of course, you can.
It doesn't matter. If you don't want to play by the rules, don't do the things that aggravate other communities.
Well, that was not what my question was about, because you are making it look like
we can be angry.
You are making it look like I have no right to be angry and to refuse to talk to you because you insulted. Because you
has got nothing to do with it.
He entirely missed my point again and said that he doesn't care whether I'm offended because I disrespect the Quran.
If you cannot handle, the freedom of speech when it comes back at you, do not try and give it to people, a community of people, by eating, spitting out the Quran, laughing at the Quran. Laughing at the Quran, and so on and so forth.
He thereby confirmed that he has absolutely no clue what he's talking about. Freedom of speech means I can express my opinions freely without fearing censorship, retribution, or punishment. If I am for free speech, that means I support people's right to express themselves. Mohammed Hijab, on the other hand, doesn't only think that freedom of speech means that everyone can say whatever they want, which is correct. He also thinks that we should all accept and not be bothered by what anyone says. I mean, that is so stupid. It doesn't even make sense.
Wallahi, when I saw this clip, I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. I mean, my mind is blown by such utter ignorance.
Mohammed Hijab, this is just the beginning, and you fail so horribly in a topic that is so basic to something that you claim to be an expert on.
Dunning-Kruger effect, you jokers, you imbeciles!
He is worse when it comes to Islam and science. During our disastrous discussion, Mohammed Hijab claimed at some point, to distract from a different topic, that the Quran speaks of multiple suns in a specific verse.
And by the way, the Quran says in chapter 25 that there are many suns.
No, it does not. He said that this is found in chapter 25, verse 61. Blessed is he who has placed constellations in the sky, or stars in the sky, and placed therein a lamp and a shining moon. He argues, however, that according to a different qiraat, a different reading of the Quran's text, the lamp here could also be read as lamps, plural, and this would then clearly indicate multiple suns, and even solar systems.
There's two qira'as. One of them is Siraj al-Munira, and there's another one, Suraj al-Munira. The Siraj al-Munira means a shining lamp, and Suraj al-Munira means many stars. Many suns, one sun and many suns. So in other words, the Quran says that there are many suns. The cosmic picture of the Quran, therefore, is that there are many suns, many solar systems, because suns are accompanied with solar systems.
What is funny is that no one seems to have made this argument before. When I Google this, I only find Mohammed Hijab again. Mohammed Hijab mentions an exegesis of the Quran, the Tafsir al-Tabari. When asked for evidence, he acts kind of shady and says that I can't speak Arabic anyway, which is why I can't understand it, but it is true.
So that means one sun. That's what Tabari is saying. And the other ones say Surujan, yeah, which means many suns. That's what Tabari says. But you can't access Tabari because it's in Arabic, so it's not in English.
Yeah. It turns out, however, that the tafsir which he references never says anything about multiple suns, but rather says that this verse could be speaking of multiple stars or objects in the sky. Mohammed Hijab's claim that the Quran here describes multiple suns and therefore makes a miraculous revelation is full of far-fetched nonsense. This is also a corruption of Islam and the Quran. If I made an argument, a claim, that equals to this but finds a flaw instead of a miracle in the Quran, then there would be so many videos by Muslim apologists insulting, attacking, exposing me, calling me an ignorant liar. But when Mohammed Hijab invents something and corrupts the Quran in favor of the Quran and of Islam, then all his honest colleagues and his brave defenders of Islam and its holy book are quiet. If this verse did indeed speak of many lamps and therefore many suns, then the verse would say that Allah placed constellations and suns and moons into the sky. Constellations are merely groups of stars, groups attributed to stars by humans. They don't really exist. And suns are also stars, or stars are suns. The Quran would be mentioning stars twice, which wouldn't really make sense. Or the Quran verse would be mentioning suns as something separate from stars, and would be making a mistake again. So even if we did accept Mohammed Hijab's reinterpretation of this Quran verse, then this would not be a miracle, but rather a fail for the Quran, one of many. Good job, MOJOB. You shot yourself in the foot, dummy. And seriously, when you keep mentioning the different versions and readings of the Quran and how they potentially changed the meaning of the Quran, especially if you're bringing that up for such a poor argument, you're making Muslims doubt. But we all know what you think about doubting Muslims, don't we?
Wallahi, some people have been calling me and giving me some emails. Brother, I have doubts. What doubts, man? What kind of man are you anyway? What kind of woman are you? What kind of Muslim are you? What kind of Muslim are you? Brother, I have doubts. What doubts, man? Brother, I have doubts. Yeah, man. Brother, I have doubts. What's the problem? Brother, I have doubts. Quiet, man.
In another vain attempt to defend his holy book, Mohammed Hijab admitted that the Quran is in alignment with 7th century Arabian cosmology. And 7th century Arabian cosmology was very primitive.
The point I'm making is that the cosmological picture in the Quran is one which can be in line with 7th century Arabian unscientific, if you're going to call it the unscientific understanding.
The problem, however, is that Mohammed Hijab also thinks that the Quran is also in alignment with 21st century scientific knowledge, because of the Quran's unique multi-dimensional compatibility with 7th century scientific knowledge and 21st century scientific knowledge.
The Quran is compatible with 7th century understandings of science or cosmology, but it also has the unique multidimensional compatibility with 21st understanding.
7th century Arabians didn't know anything about the Earth's shape. They believed the world was possibly carried on the back of an animal, and the sun went somewhere at night. Lightning and thunder were brought by some beings. For centuries, Muslims made false scientific claims and based their claims on the Quran. If the Quran does indeed potentially agree with 7th century Arabian scientific knowledge, then that makes it specifically hard for many people, including me, to take the Quran seriously and to believe in it. Because we read the Quran and we see that it speaks of pillars holding up the sky, and Allah folding the sun and the sky, and the sun moving towards a stopping point, and the moon and the sun chasing each other. This book seems to be so ignorant of the natural world. Then how are people to be blamed for their disbelief? If we can interpret the Quran as agreeing with 7th century Arabian knowledge and much more enlightened 21st century science, then that doesn't mean that the Quran is miraculous or in possession of some unique multi-dimensional compatibility. It only means that the Quran is so vague and that Islam is so unclear that you can interpret and bend the Quran as you wish. And that is definitely not a miracle. I'll tell you what it is. It is a major reason why so many people are leaving Islam. And with this, Mohammed Hijab destroys Islam once more while trying to save it. Applause for Mohammed Hijab.
You're nothing, boy! You're finished already! Look at me! Look at me! You know you're done! Keep playing the thing!
Funnily, Mohammed Hijab agrees that there are many Islamic scholars, in history or today, who agree that the earth is not round, or who seemingly argue for a flat earth.
You're right. There are some Muslim scholars in the past who have said the earth is flat. We can't be so sure to say that the Quran says that for sure. But at the same time, we can't say so surely the Quran says the earth is flat. I'm saying if you want to have a scholarly opinion, you have to allow for both interpretations to be allowed. So those both interpretations are valid.
So Muslim scholars can read the Quran and conclude that the earth is not round, and such scholars would be accepted as truthful, good Islamic scholars. But if I, a non-Muslim, agree with those Muslim scholars and say that the Quran describes a flat earth and therefore conclude that Islam is false because the earth is not flat, then my opinion is not valid, and I am an ignorant loser and an Islamophobe with misconceptions. So you can interpret the Quran as you wish as long as you believe in it. But if you disbelieve in it because you can interpret it as you wish, because it looks so vague and so primitive, then you are screwed.
What the hell? I mean...
And a lot of you are losing faith, and you shouldn't lose faith. I tell you, lose faith. It's better for you.
At one point, Mohammed Hijab attempted to prove, again, that the Quran describes a round earth and that Islam is therefore true. He says that in Quran chapter 39 verse 5, it says that Allah rolls or wraps the night into the day and the day into the night, and that this shows the Quran as describing a round earth because you wrap around a round earth, you know.
Chapter 39 verse 5. Yukawwir. Yukawwir here means that he rolls the night into the day and he rolls the night into the day into the night. This shows that the earth is round because takwir is when you wrap the night and the day around each other.
I actually use this Quran verse as a giant scientific mistake because the Quran verse says, to be accurate, that Allah wraps the night over the day and the day over the night, and then that the sun and the moon run for specified terms as this is happening. The night and the day are not wrapped. The night is not a thing. We spin and we face the sun, we experience daylight, and as we turn away from the sun, we have the neutral night, the absence of sunlight. Nothing is being wrapped and nothing is running through the sky. Nothing is happening in the way that it is described here, metaphorically or literally. The Quran doesn't know what night and day are and what role the sun plays. Seriously, it doesn't. I mean, just look at this. By the sun and its brightness, and the moon when it follows it, and the day when it displays it. The day displays the sun. And the night when it covers it, and the sky which he constructed, and the earth which he spread. This is an incredibly primitive description of the natural world, a description where the sun's brightness is revealed by the day and covered by the night, instead of the sun causing day and night. And this genius really wants to bring this, of everything, as proof that Islam is the truth. What an...
He feels the need to announce to the world that he is an utter idiot.
But now, here I think we come to the most important moments of all. Throughout our discussion, as said, Mohammed Hijab tried to prove that the Quran could be used to describe a round earth. As a result, I mentioned a simple thought experiment. Think about a scenario where you do not know what the earth and the universe looks like. Yeah. You open this Quran, this is the first thing that you read, and you only read the description of the earth in the book. What will you think? The only conclusion that you can come to is that the earth is a flat bed that has a ceiling on it which cannot be cracked.
That thought experiment has actually been done. Okay.
And as I was presenting this thought experiment, Mohammed Hijab did of course immediately interrupt me as usual, and then he said that such a thought experiment was already done.
The thought experiment has actually been done because Ibn Munada is a tabi'i. There's 3 generations, golden, they call the golden generation. Ibn Munada is actually a part of the golden generations, meaning Ibn Munada is a salaf. He is part of the golden generations. He is looking at the Quran. He doesn't have a telescope. He doesn't have any of these tools that you're talking about. And he says, we have a sanad that is sahih, a complete sanad which is sahih. He says the earth is round. So it's not fair for you to say this is what's going to happen. I've got the evidence to the contrary. Someone who lived 1,300 years ago.
Ibn Munada. I never heard that name before. And this guy is Mohammed Hijab's only proof of an early Muslim who said that the earth is round. If you Google Ibn Munada, can you guess what we get? You find Mohammed Hijab. This is going to be a classic. As it turns out, a character named Ibn Munada from the 2nd generation of Muslims does not exist. But he's not entirely wrong. But he's too wrong. There is a rather obscure guy named Abu Hussein, Ahmad ibn Jafar ibn al-Munadi, who apparently died in the 2nd half of the 4th century after Muhammad, which is the late 10th century by our Gregorian calendar. That is many generations after Muhammad and definitely not part of the first 3 generations of Muslims. We know that Mohammed Hijab is speaking of this guy because an article on the notorious Islamic webpage Islam Q&A speaks of the same guy and basically tells us what Mohammed Hijab, with his disappointing wisdom, was trying to communicate. According to the website, Ibn Taymiyyah, who is a problematic scholar from the 13th and 14th centuries, said in a response to those Muslims who believe in a flat earth that the earth is round, and that this curious character called Ibn Munadi said that the prominent scholars in his time agree that the sky is like a ball. Man. And he continued, similarly, they were unanimously agreed that the earth, with all that is contains of land and sea, is like a ball. He said that is indicated by the fact that the sun, moon, and stars do not rise and set over those who are in different parts of the earth at the same time. Rather, that occurs in the east before it occurs in the west. Sharp, right? The problem with all of this does not end. The problem with all of this is that Mohammed Hijab claimed that we have an authentic report about this guy named Ibn Munada. But we don't actually have any authentic report. We don't actually have any report about this, except a mention by Ibn Taymiyyah. And how and why are we to trust Ibn Taymiyyah, who lived 7 centuries after Muhammad, in a time where it was long known that the earth is round, because the Muslims were now benefiting from Western knowledge through conquest and exchange? Even the guy Ibn Munadi himself, if he lived in the 10th century, lived in a time generations after Indian, Persian, and Western texts made it into the Muslim culture. Mohammed Hijab even posted a supposed piece of evidence on Twitter, which is basically the report that we have here, which says nothing more than that this guy was actually a successor of the generation of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and that there is an authentic chain to this report, but there is none. What is important here is that even according to his evidence which he provided after the debate, this guy Ibn Munada is definitely not a second-generation Muslim. A Tabai, a second-generation Muslim, is somebody who has seen, who has witnessed the companions of Muhammad. That's why they are called second-generation Muslims, not first-generation Muslims, which are those who witnessed Muhammad. This Ibn Munada, according to Mohammed Hijab, is a companion of Imam Ahmad, which is also false. He was actually born after Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So Ibn Munadi is not a second-generation Muslim, he is a second-generation follower of Hanbal, which is a huge difference. He lived in a time where it was already clear that the earth is not a strange flat ground. Mohammed Hijab mentioned this guy as his single proof many times during our discussion, and ignorantly or dishonestly kept referring to him as a second-generation Muslim, a mistake which destroys his entire argument, but which he simply doesn't even comment on further, because he doesn't want his entire argument to fall apart. And now it is falling apart. You are welcome. What is funny is that when I look at this website, Islam QA, on that article, which is supposed to prove that the earth is round and that Islamic scholars knew this, I see that under the mention of this Ibn Munadi guy, the website also mentions Mohammed Hijab's favorite reference, which is about wrapping the night around the day. And then they mention some guy who died in 2001. That's it. Oh, and they also mention an Islamic scholar named Ibn Hazm. And so did Mohammed Hijab. Mohammed Hijab's other evidence that the early Muslim scholars knew that the earth was round was Ibn Hazm, who is a scholar from the Caliphate of Cordoba, from Spain, from the 11th century. Ibn Hazm is supposed to be a Spanish or Iberian native whose family converted to Islam. It is expected that they knew for centuries, almost 1,000 years till then, when Islam wasn't even formed, that the earth is round. But Mohammed Hijab kept referring to Ibn Hazm as an early scholar.
There were people from the Salaf, from the early generations, way before telescopes were invented in Islam, that said that the earth was round. And they did that despite the cosmological evidences. They used chapters of the Quran, like Ibn Hazm actually used in his Kitab Fisal, he used chapter 39 verse 5 as a reason to suggest that the earth was round.
So the names that MOJOB drops to show that early scholars knew the earth was round are Ibn Taymiyyah from the 13th century, Ibn Hazm from 11th century Spain, and some guy identified by him as Ibn Munada, who is supposed to be from the second generation Muslims, but who is actually Ibn Munadi from the 10th century, who is only mentioned by Ibn Taymiyyah, and that is all we know. Fantastic. I don't even know what to say anymore. There are no early scholars who agreed that the earth is round and who based it on the Quran. But hey, now since Mohammed Hijab wants to go back to early scholars, and since he wants to cherry-pick quotes, I did something nice. Here is a gift for him. The early scholars didn't know that the earth was round. What they did think, however, if we want to selectively refer to early Muslim scholars, is that the earth is on the back of a giant whale. And this was reportedly said by at least one person who is none other than Ibn Abbas, who was Muhammad's cousin and one of his most reliable men. So this is not some stranger 5 generations after Muhammad. It is Muhammad's cousin, who was known as extremely devout and loyal and knowledgeable in Islamic matters. It is said in numerous Islamic texts that Muhammad's loyal companion Ibn Abbas explained how Allah created everything, and that he said, first Allah created the pen, and then Allah told it to write everything, and then he created a whale, the Nun, created the heavens and the earth, and put the earth on the whale's back, and then Allah placed mountains on the earth to prevent it from shaking on the back of the whale. The pen is confirmed in the Quran. The water and creating the heavens and the earth above them is also confirmed in the Quran. And even the ridiculous notion that the earth is shaky and that Allah placed mountains on the earth to prevent it from shaking is confirmed in the Quran. The whale is also seemingly implied in the Quran in chapter 68 verse 1, which goes, Nun, by the pen and what they write. Now, Nun here is only a letter, but Nun in Arabic also stands for a whale. And Muslim interpreters, scholars, when clarifying this Quran verse, have clarified it with this ridiculous whale story. In fact, I sat down and went through over 20 different tafsirs, interpretations of the Quran by Islamic scholars, and I found that 23 particularly important, essential tafsir books by Sunni Islamic scholars from entirely different times and geographies mention this report when they comment on Quran chapter 68 verse 1. The authors of these tafsir books are Orthodox Muslims, literalists, mysticists, and even traditionalists, as Mohammed Hijab claims to be, which he is really not, with his wild interpretations of the Quran. Look, I don't even care whether this report about Ibn Abbas and the whale is authentic or not. No one knows what is authentic in Islam anyway. But if Mohammed Hijab wants to fabricate his own interpretations of the Quran and wants us to trust some scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, a strange report about some guy called Ibn Munada, whose period and name Mohammed Hijab can't even correctly remember, then how exactly can he object to the authenticity of the whale which carries the earth? Which is why the earth shakes and Allah placed mountains on the earth, especially if this is mentioned so many times, and especially if the Quran refers to different parts of it and affirms them, while we have nothing for Mohammed Hijab's supposed proof. Best just not respond. Here is a list of Muslim scholars that describe the world in such a primitive way and based their false knowledge on the Quran. Sorry, but if they describe the sun literally going somewhere, setting in a muddy spring, if they describe the earth on water with a ceiling, earths below our earth, and so on, even if they describe that the earth shakes and Allah places mountains on the earth to prevent it from shaking, then they are describing a primitive, flat earth. You know, I find it so funny that we got into the whole topic of multiple suns and round earth and revolving nights and days because I brought up one certain question. If Mohammed Hijab thinks that stars are missiles thrown at rebellious devils, one of my favorite questions about Islam and science, he never properly answered the question and then asserted that I cannot know and therefore not falsify that stars are missiles thrown at rebellious devils, and then he changed the topic, as usual. That is the strong apologetics of Mohammed Hijab that makes us tremble in fear.
And I know you're listening to me and shaking. You need to use the toilet now, I know you do.
Do you think the stars are missiles thrown at devils, for example?
Well, chapter 67, verses 1 to 5. We have certainly adorned the heavenly realm with stars, and we have made it a pelting thing for the devils.
The verse in question literally says, we adorned the Sama ad-Dunya with lamps. Sama ad-Dunya means the heaven of the earth, or the lowest heaven, not the heavenly realm, which of course sounds very sapient. In Islam, there are 7 heavens, and the sky above us is the lowest heaven, the heaven of the earth, in which there are the stars.
Now, what is, first of all, masabih? Some they say it's meteorite, some they say stars.
He then went on to question the meaning of the word lamps, masabih here, and made speculations about whether this means stars or meteors.
So it's saying that devils, because if you look at chapter 37 of the Quran and other parts, the Sama' ad-Dunya, or the heavenly realm, is adorned with stars, has many functionalities. And by the way, the Quran says in chapter 25 that there are many suns, because
this is another bad attempt to fix the Quran. The verse clearly speaks of lamps with which Allah adorned the heaven. If we look at the hadith, we even find an explanation to this in authentic reports about Muhammad. He is sitting with his people who see shooting stars or bright stars. Muhammad then explains to his ignorant companions around him that Allah, above the heavens, decrees a matter and the angels hear and obey him. But there are sneaky devils or jinns who try to overhear Allah's decrees, and they are then shot at with these shooting stars. And Mohammed Hijab is aware of this hadith. At least he should be. He is lying by omission here. These stars shot at the jinns are referred to as shihab and nujum. Shihab in Arabic is still used for shooting stars, but also for stars, while najm also means star. These words are also used for shooting stars and stars in the Quran. The Quran also uses the word kawkab for these shooting stars and for stars, and also uses the word masabih, which means lamp. This clearly refers to stars, shining lamps in the nearest heaven, shooting stars as explained in the hadith. What we call shooting stars are not stars. They are meteors. And a meteor is a meteoroid, a rock that enters our atmosphere and burns up, thereby briefly looking like a moving or shooting or falling star to our eyes. Which is why people used to think those are stars that move. In reality, it has nothing to do with stars. If the Quran did indeed refer to these meteors when it says lamps, then that would be very strange because, as said, meteoroids are not bright objects. They're just solid bodies which enter our atmosphere and then briefly light up. They are not lamps which adorn the sky. I don't know how to say this, but there is no way out of here. This analysis completely destroys and disproves the Quran. It proves the Quran as ignorant of basic things that happen in our natural world.
There is a metaphysical thing which we can't see, which is that the stars or the celestial spheres, they actually pelt the devils or the jinn, because we believe in this this creation called the jinn. These celestial bodies actually pelt them. How can you falsify that? I don't see the issue.
I love this topic of the shooting stars so much because no matter how you read the Quran, and especially when you add the Hadith to it, you clearly see that it makes false claims. But then, apologists like Mohammed Hijab have no way out, and the only thing that they can do is to talk about metaphysics and things that we cannot see and not interpret and not falsify. It's funny, isn't it? The Quran is always right, and if it is not right, then you just bend it a little bit and make it right. But if it is clearly false, then it is just a matter of the unseen, metaphysical. We can't comprehend it. It is a miracle. The Quran can thereby never be false. It is either correct or beyond our comprehension. How convenient. Such a thing would be very strange anyway. Why does the Quran, which is supposed to be for us to read, tell us things that none of us can ever verify? Some random things that none of us can ever fact check. It just looks again like Allah wants us to disbelieve, to doubt the Quran. Okay, enough of science. Let us come to what I think is one of the highlights of the discussion. Since these two friendly gentlemen claimed that killing people is entirely haram in Islam, I asked Mohammed Hijab whether apostates are to be killed according to Islam. He refused to answer my question, but instead deceptively told me what he thinks should happen to apostates in an Islamic state, or what his recommendation is. According to Islam, under an Islamic government,
unqualified understanding of it. You're not qualified, are you? Let's be honest. You don't have any training in Islam, do you?
That's true. You are
Do you have any training in Islam?
According to Islam.
So why are you saying according to Islam? You should say according to my understanding of Islam.
You are an idiot. Can I ask you a question about the Islamic rulings according to my understanding? You don't even have the brain to think about this. According to Islam, somebody who leaves Islam and explains to the public that they have left Islam and why they have left Islam. Is this person to be put to death under Islam?
Well, I've written a book on this. It's actually called... I'm not saying to you that the only ruling in Islam is that the person who is a public apostate is to be put to death. What I actually recommend in my book, which is ironic, I say that in this day and age, this is my position. I proposed that it would be within the maslahah, the common interest of the Muslim people, to make peace treaties with non-Muslim countries such that apostates in certain Muslim countries are not to be put to death and in fact are strategically located to other non-Muslim countries.
Mohammed Hijab knows that the majority opinion when it comes to apostates in an Islamic state is to execute them. His dear friend Ali Dawa, his friend Daniel Hikikachu, and many others that he associates with agree with that, and he knows that. In fact, here is Mohammed Hijab's comment under Ali Dawa's video in which Ali Dawa explicitly says that I and other apostates should be executed.
People like you, little weaklings who leave their religion and cause corruption in the land by spreading it, the capital punishment in Islamic law would be applied to you. We have no doubt, and we're proud of that.
This apous apostate makes me sick. Great to see the team humiliate this creature. Loved by Ali Dawa. This is the compassionate Islam, the loving Islam. Salam, peace. Mohammed Hijab himself shared a meme before, in which I supposedly say I would be killed in an Islamic state, and Daniel Hikikachu says yes. And Mohammed Hijab shares this with an LOL, and he knows very well that these people are not joking. The answer that he gave to me, however, is that he thinks it is in the best interest of the wider Muslim community to expel ex-Muslims in an Islamic state. That's also what the Nazis wanted to do with the Jews, by the way, before they decided to just kill them. He bases this suggestion on a treaty that Muhammad made with his polytheist opponents in Arabia, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. But he is completely wrong.
In the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, there was a clear parenthesis put in place, or a clause, a stipulation put in place, whereby apostates would be actually redirected or strategically relocated.
The Treaty of Hudaybiyah is a treaty that Muhammad negotiated and agreed to with the Meccan polytheists, the Quraysh, under which the two sides would make peace for 10 years, and the polytheists would give the Muslims access to Mecca. Additionally, people who flee from Muhammad to the polytheists can stay there, but people who flee to Muhammad from polytheists must be sent back. This was a compromise on Muhammad's part and upset his followers. Nothing in this treaty points at a safe relocation of apostates.
There was a clear parenthesis put in place, or a clause, a stipulation put in place, whereby apostates would be actually redirected or strategically relocated.
Mohammed Hijab says that most scholars that he read agree with him.
From my reading, the majority of scholars say it's possible that a public apostate is not actually put to death and is strategically located to another country, for example, a safe haven.
Personally, I have never heard of this. Mohammed Hijab himself does not have a source for this, and it seems that he simply misunderstood something, or he deliberately misrepresents something. Many of Mohammed Hijab's own friends and followers denounced him for this view and accused him of twisting Islam and being deviant. His friend Daniel Hikikachu, when asked whether Mohammed Hijab's suggestion to relocate apostates is an Islamically accepted opinion, briefly and clearly said no. But guess what happened? Nothing. No one called him out on this. He never further clarified this. No one talked about this. They just made it quietly go away, like a bunch of dishonest liars. And yet, if I had offered a criticism of Islam and distorted something the way Mohammed Hijab distorted it, which I never do, then I would have been under brutal attacks by the same Muslim apologists. He wasted our time for 25 minutes because he simply didn't want to answer my question. That apostates are to be put to death in Islam, as agreed by all the jurisprudential schools within Islam. That's all Mohammed Hijab needed to say, but he wiggled himself out of that and gave his personal recommendation as if it matters. In fact, here is a list of Muslim scholars that Mohammed Hijab looks up to, that he looks at for reference, who agree that apostates are to be put to death, including Ibn Taymiyyah, who is something like the god of Mohammed Hijab's jurisprudential creed of Islam. He clearly says that people who leave Islam are to be sentenced to death in any case, but he separates those who leave Islam in two, which is those who simply leave Islam and those who leave Islam and then also fight Islam. And such people, the offenders against Islam, are to be put to death even if they repent. This is the view of Ibn Taymiyyah. But now, here is where it gets really interesting. To support his idea about deporting Muslims, Mohammed Hijab cites one Islamic scholar, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah.
For that reason, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, from my reading, the majority of scholars say it's possible that a public apostate is not actually put to death and is strategically located to another country, for example.
When I look at his supposed book, which he also shared on Twitter for evidence, I see that he quotes Ibn Qayyim, but the quote clearly doesn't say what Mohammed Hijab claims it says. It goes, "It is permissible to draft a treaty which states that those who flee from Muslims from the non-Muslims are returned, while those that flee from the non-Muslims are not to be returned, are returned, while those to be..." Whatever, you get the point. He messed it up with the quoting here in his book. But the point is that Ibn Qayyim says that it is permissible to draft a treaty according to which those who flee from Muslims to the non-Muslims don't have to be returned, because Muhammad did that too. This says nothing about strategically relocating apostates to non-Muslim lands. On the contrary, Ibn Qayyim is seemingly of the opinion that apostates are to be executed as it is in the Islamic tradition. I looked up Ibn Qayyim's famous book Zad al-Ma'ad, The Provisions of the Hereafter. And in this book, Ibn Qayyim clearly says that the Prophet Muhammad ruled that one who changes his religion must be executed. In another part, it reports that a guy called Maqis ibn Sababa, among the Meccan polytheists, was killed because he had left Islam and fled to Mecca from the Muslims. At another part of the book, it even says, as for the legal benefit of the story of the conquest, it proves that an apostate may be killed without being asked to repent. Bin Abi Star accepted Islam and migrated, and he used to record the revelation for the Messenger of Allah. Then he apostatized and relocated to Mecca. Thereafter, Uthman bin Affan brought him to the Messenger of Allah to pledge allegiance to him. However, he withdrew from him and said, "Rather, I withdrew from him so that one of you would kill him." So, Mohammed Hijab doesn't actually have any source to back up his recommendation. And even the one guy that he quotes approves of the execution of apostates. This is a complete destruction of Mohammed Hijab's entire point, and of 25 minutes or 30 minutes of apologetics in regards to apostasy. Now, of course, Mohammed Hijab is not making this recommendation because he's so caring and so altruistic.
So why are you trying to force me?
Do you condemn the killing of apostates?
Force me to want to kill you people like you. I don't want to
because
kill
I don't believe you.
Look, you don't have to believe me. I've given you evidence.
Do you condemn the killing of apostates? Do you condemn it?
Yeah, because if you kill apostates now, there is no law and order.
So you condemn capital punishment for apostasy.
I absolutely condemn.
Do you condemn your friend Ali Dawa telling me that I should be punished to death?
I absolutely condemn the killing of apostates because that is completely against
fantastic.
Law and order.
Because it goes against law and order. But that was not what I asked, and he clearly knows that. He's not stupid. I was clearly asking about the Islamic legal execution for apostates, not about random people lawlessly, vigilantly killing people in the streets.
Do you condemn
the killing of apostates? Do you condemn the killing of apostates? You
Never,
condemn capital punishment for apostasy. Do you condemn your friend Ali Dawa telling me that I should be punished to death?
I absolutely condemn.
See, this is another example where he deliberately, deceptively gives a wrong answer and justifies it to himself. He's lying. That's what Mohammed Hijab's true face is.
Liar! You're a liar! You're finished already!
Somehow later, he also said that in an ideal Islamic state, I would probably be killed by vigilantes.
And the public apostates that come out and say, we are public apostates, just like you. And even, and so on and so forth. Maybe not just like you, actually, but someone who does all that stuff. And then they can be... What would happen to you? Well, it depends on what you want to do. If you are a public apostate and just
if I did exactly what I'm doing right now in the ideal Islamic country, what would happen to me?
Well, look, if you did what you're doing right now in an ideal Islamic country, I'm sure there will be vigilantes, okay, that will take the law into their own hands.
That's very refreshing to hear. I believe the victims of the many terrorists and vigilantes in the last years will probably want to thank Mohammed Hijab for that one. He reveals toward the end that the reason he is against capital punishment for apostates is that it is currently not in the best interest of Muslims.
And I think that if Muslim majority countries make such contracts, that will decrease the ability of the non-Muslim enemy to be able to attack Islam and its peoples on the pretense of human rights. Imagine trying to kill a public apostate in Brunei. What do you think America would do? I think they would threaten invasion. For that reason, I don't think that it's within anybody's interest.
I think that part was especially important to hear for those who kept saying that Mohammed Hijab actually had a better solution and that I simply didn't want to accept his better solution. Of course I didn't accept it because I know exactly what he's doing. Mohammed Hijab doesn't think it is wrong to execute apostates. He just thinks that Muslims are currently too weak to practice Islam fully, which is why they should not do it today because of the West. So, in summary, Mohammed Hijab acknowledges that apostates are killed in Islam, but he recommends the forced relocation of ex-Muslims to non-Muslim lands, which is based on his misunderstanding or misinterpretation of Islamic texts. And he suggests this because right now, the Islamic world is too weak to implement Islamic laws and could be attacked by non-Muslim nations for human rights violations. Also, in his ideal state, I would be killed by vigilantes, but somehow he's supposed to have destroyed my objections to Islam's treatment of apostates. What the hell? But hey, don't forget, his response was a professional response.
So I think this will be a professional answer here, not like yours. My answer is this. It really depends on the situation. I'm not saying to you that
The Islamic State of Britain.
it's all to do with the allegiance or non-allegiance to a state.
And you believe that the state should be Islamic and everybody should be forced to pledge allegiance to the state, don't you?
No, I don't think that is any. Look, if it's a Muslim majority country, absolutely. But if it's a
Absolutely.
yeah, if it's a Muslim
So what is the difference then?
No, if
You
it's a
believe
Muslim
that an
majority
Islamic state should be
country-
established.
I think if it's a Muslim majority country, if they want Islam, then surely on democratic principles, outsiders should have nothing to do with that.
You believe that an Islamic state, an Islamic government should be established if the majority is Muslim. You, for example, want to spread Islam to the entire UK. So if the majority of the entire UK, if the majority of the entire UK was Muslim, you would want everybody to adhere to an Islamic state, and this Islamic state should require.
I don't
everybody to
want an
pledge
Islamic
allegiance to
state in
Islamic
Britain.
state.
I'm not asking.
So that doesn't make any sense. He wants to spread Islam, at which he's not really doing a good job. And he would love to see people convert to Islam in masses. And he also believes that a majority Muslim country should establish an Islamic state. And he is a Muslim proselytizer in England, which concludes that the UK would also be an Islamic state, or Britain, or England, whatever you call it. And that Islamic state would require its Muslim population and the rest of its population to be loyal to this Islamic state. And you believe that the state should be Islamic and everybody should be forced to pledge allegiance to the state, don't you?
No, I don't think that is any. Look, if it's a Muslim majority country, absolutely.
Mohammed Hijab also does have an obsession with Europeans and says that we ex-Muslims are the slaves of our white masters. He also describes the disbelievers as cattle. He also says that Islamophobic non-Muslim women actually want to be captured and raped by Islamists like himself. And he presents an imagery of the strong, proud Muslims sexually assaulting my wife. He also frequently says that the enemies of Islam are afraid of him, and he thanks Allah for instilling fear in the hearts of the disbelievers. What exactly do you think that does? What exactly do you think happens then, Mohammed Hijab? How do you reconcile that with also calling people Islamophobic? And what exactly does it do when you say very dumb, terrible, disgusting things and people are outraged? Does it make your religion look powerful? No, it makes you look obnoxious, as if people didn't have enough reason to already feel that way. You make yourself look ridiculous to even more people who previously had no chance to witness that. And by you, I don't just mean you as a person. I mean the entire ideology that you're trying to represent and defend. You don't make Islam and Muslims look better at all. You make Islam look pathetic, and you give Muslims, whom you try to represent and defend, a very bad image in the world. You accuse me of inciting hatred, but that's what you are doing by representing them in such a way. That is really a shame, because I know many Muslims who would just want you to shut the hell up and stop making them look so bad in the world. Stop making them look even worse in the world. But yeah, you would probably shame them for not being proud and good, great Muslims, for not being tough enough.
Be quiet. Have some guts. Be a man. Stop being the slave of the Orientalists. The inferiority complex. What kind of man are you anyway? What kind of woman are you? What kind of Muslim are you? I'm your teacher, boy.
There's no religion on the face of the earth that has been able to make so many challenges about the future, so many predictions about the future, and be so accurate in all of those predictions. The Prophet Muhammad, he made explicit prophecies about the future. He told us Islam will spread to Egypt, to India. Islam is going to enter Jerusalem, the construction of very tall buildings. Islam predicted the advent of sexually transmitted diseases. Like, what?
STDs. Muhammad predicted STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. This reminds me of this comment that I received long ago. Hello, my friend. Islam is not as you think. Islam is against life, but no, on the contrary, Islam is the religion of God. Christianity, yes, God came down, but come for a specific time. Before the distortion of the Bible, Jesus said, peace be upon him, after he comes after me, a prophet named Ahmed, and we all know, especially Britain, is Muhammad, peace be upon him, more than the name of Ahmed from his names. Did you know that Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us the treatment of cancer and AIDS? And all diseases, if Muhammad was a liar, how did he know the treatment? And I was treated for many serious diseases, and we took more than one way of treatment. Ada is not the name of the names of Muslims. Muslim, they're really a difference.
What is all of this going on here? Like, what is all of this stuff? This is not a joke, brothers and sisters.
Of course, Muhammad did not predict STDs. On the contrary, Muhammad didn't even know that infectious diseases exist. He denied their existence as superstition. And his reasoning was that if one camel makes the other camel sick, then how did the first camel get sick? Wow. This is the genius of Muhammad, the brilliant, amazing genius of Muhammad, Allah's beloved prophet. Muhammad was an ignorant 7th century desert dweller. He was not a prophet, not a demigod, but he was a sex god in the desert. He did not talk about STDs and didn't predict them, but he might as well have died from an STD. You can try to interpret and twist Muhammad's prophecies to make it look like all of them somehow turned out right. And I can spend a long time analyzing all that, but here is something different. Muhammad said earthquakes will increase. We can't verify much from the past, but data from the last 100 years shows that high-intensity earthquakes have been decreasing, although we noted more significant earthquakes because we can record them better, and they concern more people due to the rapid population growth. So this is basically a fail. Wealth will be so abundant that wealthy people will find nobody to give charity to. I'm pretty sure that everyone can agree that that definitely did not happen. Afflictions will appear. Wow, great. Highly informative. In the future, people will die. Prove me wrong. He looked at a young boy and said that the last hour would come before this boy grows very old. Clearly that didn't happen. He said one night that while he cannot inform people about when the last hour will happen, he gives an oath that none of the creatures of the earth will survive the next 100 years. That is some typical Momo mumbo jumbo. It doesn't really mean anything but what it seems to say, which is that no humans will survive after these 100 years. Everyone will be dead. That clearly did not happen. He said Muslims would conquer the Arabian Peninsula, then they would conquer the Romans, and then the Dajjal, the Islamic Antichrist, would appear, which brings the last hour. That didn't happen. Muhammad placed his hand on the head of one of his little companions and said that when he sees the caliphate established in Jerusalem, the last hour will be nearer than his hand is to his head. That didn't happen. And so on. You get the point. In fact, if we want to combine Muhammad's prophecies and Islam's amazing ignorance of the scientific world, then I would always want to go back to Muhammad's claim that the sun goes to prostrate under Allah's throne at night and asks for permission to rise again. And then it comes and rises, and one day it will not be given permission, and it will rise from the west, and then the last hour will come. Please defend that. Yeah, I know, it's a matter of the unseen, it's metaphorical, we can't describe it, we cannot explain it, we cannot falsify it. Muhammad's prophecies were clearly not accurate prophecies, and definitely not all of them. Much of it is just a bunch of nonsense. Most of them are so vague, like the Quran, you can do whatever you want with them. Let's come to Mohammed Hijab's disturbing personality. Since he is so bad at defending Islam, and maybe he has a lot of frustrations, he often gets very angry and then says very vile, very stupid, unbelievable things. So before we get to the final part of this analysis, I want to talk about Mohammed Hijab's behavior toward others in depth. This will give you a little bit of a deeper insight into Mohammed Hijab's personality, but also into the collective Muslim morality. This will be a bit disturbing. So if you have kids with you, I don't know why you have them with you, it's maybe a good idea to send them away right now. Are they gone? Okay. As mentioned previously, Mohammed Hijab told me to commit suicide and then shortly after deleted those tweets. When called out on this by others and by me, he asked what is wrong with suicide and encouraging suicide under a nihilistic or utilitarian worldview. Now, first off, utilitarianism implies that what is pleasurable or beneficial to people or to most people is good. How the hell could you conclude that committing suicide and encouraging people to commit suicide is not bad under that worldview?
What the hell? I mean,
But I will get to his understanding of philosophy and utilitarianism, which he can't even pronounce correctly, in a little bit.
On utilitarianism.
A series of extremely important philosophers have gone through the problem of human existence and existential angst, and even the problem of suicide in length. Most philosophers who have explored the human will to live have concluded that humans want to live and want to flourish. This is even the central idea of the philosophy of Aristotle, for example. Psychologists have appealed to science and concluded that humans have in common the will to live, and not only humans. That is why if you get in front of a train, you will instinctually get extremely scared and want to jump out of the way, unless your judgment is severely clouded by despair, or if you have a mental illness that overrides your will to live, for example. When people commit suicide, it's not because they are sad and that's why they just want to die. No, it is mostly because they struggle with mental illness, or they are caught in a desperate situation and don't find a way out. They fear for their tomorrow because they did something terribly wrong, or something terrible happened to them. Telling somebody that they should commit suicide, that they should jump off a high building, is almost guaranteed to go against their worldview. Even a nihilist, which Mohammed Hijab baselessly accused me of being as an insult, would find it stupid to commit suicide and would probably say, dude, what the hell, if you tell others to commit suicide. Because believing in an inherent meaninglessness of life or of morals does not imply or conclude that the person should die or kill themselves, or that they should not see a problem with being killed, for example. Funnily enough, when I called him out on the whole suicide thing, he published a video in which he explained that he wasn't angry or anything, but he only wanted to test my consistency by telling me to commit suicide. And that is why he quickly posted and then deleted those tweets, to point out that I will be offended by him telling me to commit suicide, and that I'm therefore a hypocrite. There is just a giant genius master plan behind everything that Mohammed Hijab does. He would never make a mistake.
this is a quick response. I don't want to spend much time on this individual, but it's a quick response to a person who calls himself the Apostate Prophet AP. This Apos individual is a vile creature. So I wanted to test whether he believes in moral subjectivism or relativism. Because sometimes I put something on Twitter and then delete it. And they think, oh, he's deleting it because he said something out of impulse and now he's deleting it. No, there's a method behind the madness to be able to show you the hypocrisy of these individuals. I said to Apos, if I were you, I'd rather die from the cowardliness that I have, the pain of a coward, than continue, or something to this effect. So go and jump off a building, go and kill yourself.
That doesn't even make sense, and he's lying about why he posted those tweets and deleted them. He simply got angry because I was calling him a coward, which is why he angrily posted that and then immediately deleted it. And although he claimed that that was just to test my consistency, he later went back and deleted every related comment. And then he even went back and deleted this explanation video, which was supposed to explain why he did this giant master plan. That clearly doesn't look like he had a genius plan behind this. He made a mistake. He was angry. He was impulsive. But it's very hard for Mohammed Hijab to admit his own mistakes. If it wasn't a mistake, then I will have to say Mohammed Hijab is very stupid for not understanding nihilism, utilitarianism, and suicide. If it was a mistake, then he is a liar when he says that it was a great plan, a strategy. In any case, Mohammed Hijab is either a liar or an idiot. After the whole suicide thing, when I mocked him for refusing to have a fair debate with me, he also appeared in the live chat of my stream with David Wood and made a series of very strange comments. Let me read. You two can play with each other. Get on your knees for David Wood. Gimp, David Wood can give you a golden shower. Go ahead and give David Wood what he wants. Wink. Let David Wood give you a golden shower. Gimp, get on your knees for your master, boy. You can suck that. Golden showered from your master. I know you need a slave master. Golden shower. Gimp, get on your knees for your master. Let him slap your face, you fiend. I mean, what the hell, man?
This individual, this man has real problems.
This only shows again what kind of weird stuff is going on in Mohammed Hijab's head. Why the hell is he telling David Wood and me to urinate on each other, to wear a bondage suit and to be a gimp, to get on my knees and to suck. It disturbs me to even pronounce this, mostly, but not only out of respect for David Wood's worldview and morals. Honestly, I wasn't even aware of the term gimp, but Mohammed Hijab, in the name of Islamic apologetics, taught me that. Allahu Akbar and shit. In the video that he published and later took down, he also explained that telling us to give each other a golden shower was not said out of anger and insanity, no, it was said to test my moral consistency.
Another thing I said, I was talking about homosexuality. I said, how about you and David Wood get involved in some kind of sexual activity? How about you get on your knees? Didn't like that. But wait a minute, what's the problem? Homosexuality should be fine. Now, you might think this is a very crude approach, and I would agree with you, and it's very questionable, but I have a method behind the madness, and you need to understand what the method is.
Wow, what a genius. That is a blatant lie, unfortunately, because in the same video, he also mentions how he told me in the past to engage in sexual activities with my sister and my mother, and he says that this was also just him testing my consistency.
So I wanted to test his theory. If you're honest about believing that incest is morally acceptable, there has to be some kind of foreplay, some kind of luring process between relatives. There has to be a sexual drive. Yes?
What he forgot, however, is that back when he made those incest posts, he took them down afterwards, explaining that his fellow Muslims advised him to calm down and take them down. So back then he did acknowledge that he was wrong. But now he's saying that he doesn't make and delete those tweets because he is angry or impulsive. No, it's because he has a genius master plan. He knows exactly what he's doing all the time. By the way, when he says that he made those golden shower posts and the gay sex suggestions to test our consistency, then what the hell is he actually talking about? David Wood is a Christian. We all know this. So he can't be testing David Wood's moral consistency here. All he would be doing is to get mockery in response and disgust from David Wood and his audience. He is clearly lying. He got impulsive, angry, and weird. He just made up the master plan idea to make himself look less neurotic. And this also shows his poor understanding and his ignorance of ethics. He thinks it is okay to tell me to engage in weird sexual fantasies with a man and to urinate on each other, because there is nothing wrong with that in my worldview, which is why I shouldn't be offended. Has Mohammed Hijab never heard of being gay? I'm sure he could ask his friend Daniel Hikikachu. He's very familiar with those topics.
LGBT, I call them rectum sex enthusiasts.
Just because I think it is not wrong for gay people to exist and to have interactions and relationships with each other, that does not mean that I myself will engage in those activities. It doesn't even mean that I like that stuff. On the contrary, I feel uncomfortable about having sexual interactions and relationships with a man. But that is not because this is in my natural disposition which Allah gave to me. No.
You think it's wrong because deep down you have a morality which is, we would say, a predisposed morality, that incest is wrong, that suicide is wrong.
What?
He honestly thinks that we need some predisposed morality from Allah to understand that killing ourselves is bad.
So I told this atheist, don't eat food. Starve. Starve to death. Didn't like that. But wait a minute. What is wrong with starving to death in an atheistic worldview? Deep down, they know that eating food is good and that starving to death is wrong, bad. And why do they know that? Because they have a predisposed morality from Allah, which is why they know that starving to death is bad.
And that another thing I said, I was talking about homosexuality.
Many gay men also find it very undesirable to have sexual relationships with women. In Mohammed Hijab's primitive Islamic worldview, if you allow something, then that means you must also like that certain thing, and you must also have no problem engaging in that certain thing. Because that is how Islam sees and defines the world, where you have to forbid everything that is bad and command everything that is good. There is not really a middle ground. I mean, I don't even have anything against people urinating on each other. If people are into that, I personally would not do it because I find it disgusting. Not because I find it morally disgusting, morally repulsive, no. I am just disgusted by the nature of having urine on my face or drinking it, for example, which has nothing to do with morals. I'm also disgusted by eating snot, for example, and there's nothing morally weird about that. Mohammed Hijab is seemingly incapable of thinking with nuance and reasoning, and thinks that all choices for me are just like choosing between different colors. And no, this is not just a comparison that I'm making up, he actually really does think that.
This is a neutral question, almost the same as asking what is your favorite color. Believing that incest is morally acceptable should be the same as me asking you what is your favorite color.
How stupid. A short example, which also has to do with the next topic. He suggests that I should engage in a sexual relationship with a different person, a man, for example. I would not only disapprove of that and find that an ugly and unbecoming weird suggestion because I don't like engaging in such a relationship, I would also reject that and find it offensive because I have a commitment to my own partner, to my wife. Now, you can theoretically argue as much as you want about what is wrong with adultery under an atheistic, utilitarian, nihilistic worldview. That's all nonsense. What is true is that I am alive and I have an agreement with my wife. A concept established by people for purely functional reasons. I create a family with my wife. We commit to each other. We find safety in each other. If I go out and randomly start interacting in sexual relationships with other people, then my partner will feel eventually unsafe. Maybe she will start doing similar things as a response, which will destabilize our relationship. It will destabilize our household, our children. It will destabilize our trust in each other and our feeling of safety at home, which is why we choose not to do that, which is why we agree to have a proper relationship with each other. It doesn't matter whether to you there is nothing wrong with that under a nihilistic worldview or whatever it is that you're talking about. And that's how simple it is, Mohammed Hijab. But you know what? Mohammed Hijab doesn't understand this, and he sees no problem in also sexually harassing my wife and the wives of Abdullah Samir and Abdullah Gondal, two ex-Muslims, including making assertions about our sex lives, telling our wives to find different husbands, telling his followers that our Islamophobic wives secretly want to be raped by people like him, and even making a tweet in which he presents a written imagery of him and his proud fellow Muslims raping my wife. Yes. When these anti-Muslim attention whore Islamophobes need to get on their knees in intellectual submission before they are whipped by freedom of speech by the Twitter Muslims, and they reluctantly open their mouth in protestation to find that they have been defiled by truth. This is an actual tweet made by Mohammed Hijab in the middle of all the heat, and it displays an imagery of Muslims raping whore Islamophobes. He just packed it in such a way that he gets away with it. Now, let me remove all the X's here, which he added while probably also thinking of himself as so smart and creative. And read that again. When these whore Islamophobes need to get on their knees in submission before they are whipped by the Muslims, and they reluctantly open their mouth in protestation to find that they have been defiled. I don't know if I need to make it any clearer, but the imagery is one of Islamophobic whores being forced to get on their knees before the Muslims, and then they are whipped and at least orally raped. And these disgusting tweets are still there, and he sees no problem with them, and has to this day not apologized. But hey, how dare I rip up a piece of paper? Rape is fine, sexual harassment is fine, threats are fine, executing people for disbelieving is fine, expulsion is fine, but how dare I rip up the Quran? Is this how Muslims want to represent themselves? Is this really who they are?
The truth is this, is that the people now know what kind of vulgarities come out of this person's mouth.
Disgusting.
What kind of dirty individual
Absolutely
this is. Sickening human being. Talking to a woman, calling her, oh, you're a boy. You're nothing. Do you understand? You would never come to me and speak to me like that. Like the way you speak to that girl. You're Ali. Because he's a little pervert, harassing, talking rape talk. If I did that to a Christian person or a Jewish person, atheist person, you're sick. You are sick. Alik.
I want to show you once again Mohammed Hijab's ignorance and dishonesty. Mohammed Hijab confidently asserted several times that I said there is nothing wrong with bestiality.
Because you're on the record of saying that bestiality is okay.
That is a complete lie. I have never even talked about bestiality, and just in case you're wondering, I do definitely not think that there is nothing wrong with it. He also asserted that I said there was nothing wrong with incest.
Incest is okay, you said. Incest is okay.
No, I have never said that either.
It's an atheist who's on the record saying that he believes that, for example, incest is morally acceptable.
And that is also a lie. What I said during a conversation with Armin Navabi very long ago.
What's wrong with incest?
It has bad health consequences. Like
for the kids,
if you-
right? If it's two sisters, they can't have kids.
Yes, right.
Okay. So if two sisters or if two brothers have incest sexual relationship, there's nothing. I can't see anything wrong with it, right?
Yeah, objectively, there is nothing wrong with it. Let's make
Yeah.
it.
Where's the harm? Where's the harm? Find the harm. Morality means harm.
That doesn't really mean what Mohammed Hijab and others think it means. That was a part of a discussion about incest from a utilitarian perspective, where Armin and I both agreed that incest is bad because it is harmful and we find it disgusting. But thinking about it, we cannot point out that there is anything objectively wrong if the involved parties cannot make babies and therefore hurt anyone, and there is then no harm in that. What is meant with there is nothing wrong with it is not that it is acceptable or good or not objectionable. What is meant with that is that with that specific case, there is objectively no harm in it. That does not say anything about whether incest is good or bad. I still agree that it could be argued that there is theoretically nothing wrong with two consenting adults who cannot procreate to have such a relationship. But I still find it wrong, and I don't think it should be normalized, because normalizing such an activity can lead to troublesome, destructive outcomes. That is consequentialism. So what I'm saying is incest is wrong because of this. And if this didn't exist, then there would be nothing wrong with incest. What Mohammed Hijab is saying is that incest is wrong because of this, Islam. And if there was no Islam, then there would be nothing wrong with it. We are both saying the same thing, but they are pointing at me and acting like I said something disgusting because they can't think very far. In fact, Ali Dawa texted me a long time ago, and I clarified to him that if there was no harm, then there would be no problem with it, but there is harm, which is why it is wrong. So that's like saying if there was no harm, then wife beating would be okay, but there is harm on the wife and her mental health, on the family, possibly children, and the society, which is why it is wrong. By that, I am not saying that wife beating is okay or could be okay. I am clearly saying that it is impossible for it to be considered okay. I think this is very clear, especially if you are familiar with ethics. It doesn't even matter if you agree with my conclusion or not. What matters is that because of my conclusions, I find incest and wife beating wrong. I also explained this to Mohammed Hijab. I've said to Ali Dawa, he asked me, do you think it's okay for the father and the son to have sex? I said, if there was no harm, then there would be no problem with it. But that is not reality because such intercourse will have harm on the individuals and the society, which is why incest is not okay. But he, of course, completely ignored my explanation and deflected from the topic and changed the topic by asserting that I cannot prove the harm principle. Which is what I clearly said.
Can you objectively prove the harm principle?
We could go lengthily into the discussion on that.
Right now, you said something.
I will not discuss it.
You asked me to prove.
I will not discuss it. I'm correcting the language.
Objectively prove the harm principle.
Which again doesn't matter. What matters is that I find it wrong, as opposed to them arguing that I find it okay. And guess what he did then? He published a meme video which is supposed to prove that I am a liar and I do support incest because I told him I didn't say that, but there is footage of me saying that.
You're on the record of saying that a father can have sex with his son. Incest is okay, you said. Incest is okay.
No, I've never said that either.
So if two sisters or if two brothers have incest sexual relationship, there's nothing. I can't see anything wrong with it, right?
Well, there is actually nothing wrong with it, yeah.
No, I've never said that either.
Actually nothing wrong with it, yeah.
Look, do you believe it is the case or not?
I've said to Ali Dawa, he asked me, do you think it's okay for the father and the son to have sex?
Yeah.
I said, if there was no harm to society.
Yeah, so you allow it.
Hey, shut up.
I said if there evidently was no harm.
Yeah, so there you have it, bro.
There are now several options to pick from. Mohammed Hijab is a liar because he heard my explanation,
Which is why incest is not okay.
but he still published a video out of context which made me look bad. Mohammed Hijab is ignorant of basic ethics because he didn't understand that I can find something bad and disagree with it even if I do not find a case inherently wrong. Mohammed Hijab is stupid and never understood what was being said. I'm sorry, there is simply no other option besides these. So, is Mohammed Hijab a liar, ignorant, or stupid?
Crook! Wallah, you're a crook. You are a crook. You are a crook.
But let's get to how he claimed victory over morality and how poor his understanding of it actually is. As mentioned before, he doesn't understand that I may allow something without engaging in that certain thing. Mohammed Hijab's understanding of morality is even poorer than that. He thinks, for example, that somebody who does not believe in God, somebody who is an atheist like myself, cannot ground their morals on objective values, that this is impossible, and that a person who cannot ground their morals on objective values cannot criticize someone else's moral perspectives.
On an atheistic worldview, you can't tell me anything morally. You can't tell me you should do this and you shouldn't do this. On atheism, you have no mechanism which anchors morality. What I'm saying to you is that morally speaking, yeah, as an atheist, you have no anchorage, meaning you cannot claim anything is objective.
Which is why my criticism of Islam's miserable morals fail by default. And that is such nonsense. I understand where he's coming from. He comes from Islam, a system where everything is prescribed, everything is exactly stated, clearly outlined. You don't have to think. And if there is no God, no religion, especially no religion like Islam, then there is no place, no source, where you can take clearly outlined, objective moral values from. The problem is that that doesn't matter at all. It is pointless to say that we cannot obtain prescribed objective moral values. Because if we don't believe in a God, if we don't believe that there is some conscious force which prescribes everything, then we are not supposed to get moral values that were clearly outlined and prescribed by an external force. That is an expectation you have if you believe in religion. Naturally, there is no such thing. Many people would agree, however, that objective moral values are true without God, and that we can find objective moral values independent of human opinion in nature. This is known as naturalism. With that view, one can, for example, challenge the idea of child marriage, because one could argue that it is in our nature to flourish and to live, to make progress, and child marriage harms an individual from an early age, psychologically and otherwise. It prevents us from flourishing and becoming better, which is why it is objectively wrong. Now, whether Mohammed Hijab agrees with a naturalistic view or with the conclusions of these ethics is completely irrelevant. Others do not agree with Mohammed Hijab's propositions. They do not agree that his propositions actually exist. They think he only made them up. And they are vague, invalid, and wrong, although to him they are undoubtedly true. What matters is that Mohammed Hijab's moral perspective exists, and so do many others that are objective or subjective, with or without God. But even if we did ground our moral values on subjective, not objective standards, and even if our subjective values depended on factors such as time and place, we could then still hold a universalist worldview, in which we believe that our moral values are true or better or ideal. And we could then impose those moral values on others and thoroughly justify that. For example, I could say that good and bad is subjective, but if we had an ideal observer, that observer would watch us and decide that murdering each other is an extremely poor thing to do, while not murdering each other is better. And banning murder and helping each other is the ideal thing to do, because it seemingly gives the best results to everybody, to most of us. In this view, morality is subjective and depends on the subjective observations, the judgments of an observer. But it is still a universalist moral perspective, where we can and must judge morals, our own and the morals of others, and grade them as good or bad. To make it simple again, I can acknowledge that morals are not objective facts and that morality is subjective, but I can still acknowledge that rape is disgusting, dysfunctional, and destructive, which is nearly universally agreed. Someone like Mohammed Hijab may then come and say, rape is wrong according to you, but what if other people want to rape and what if they find it good? That means you cannot judge my rape as wrong. But that would be some stupid sophistry which carries no weight, no value in the real world at all. And it would not prevent me from using violent force to stop rape when I see it. Nor will it prevent me from judging Islam, which allows the sexual use and abuse of female slaves, as disgusting. Only in the case of normative moral relativism, for example, normative cultural relativism, would it be true that I cannot judge someone else's or a different culture's moral values, because I would then not only hold that morals are subjective, but I would also think that we should therefore treat morals as subjective and should tolerate each other's morals without judging them, because everyone is right in their own right. And that is an extremely unpopular opinion in philosophy. That said, this whole topic is much more complex than Mohammed Hijab makes it look like, and it goes into so many different perspectives. It does not simply consist of the dictionary definition of objective and subjective. You will not even go through and thoroughly understand this in a basic philosophy 101 class. And our friend MOJOB, who is a self-proclaimed expert without actually any education in this topic, is definitely not a good expert. He cannot handle it at all. Now, I didn't want to engage in the topic of philosophy and distract from Islam, but Mohammed Hijab does that all the time. So here is a topic that his fans have been waiting for forever. There was this one part during our discussion when Mohammed Hijab asked me whether I'm an objectivist or a subjectivist. And then I asked him whether he believes there is only objectivism and subjectivism and nothing else. And when he said yes, I laughed.
Did you just say if I'm not an objectivist, then I must be a subjectivist? Is that what
You have to be. If you don't believe in objective morality.
So if I don't believe in objective morality, then I have to believe in subjective morality.
Yeah, because either objective or subjective. You've got two choices. What's the third option? Go on.
He then declared that I know nothing about philosophy, that he won, that I'm finished, and all that crap again. Listen, morality is not indeed restricted to objective and subjective, which doesn't even begin to properly describe meta-ethics. There are different views. One of them is that moral statements refer to objective truths, meaning murder is wrong is a statement about the objective, independent fact that murder is wrong, regardless of subjective opinion and factors. That is what MOJOB calls objectivism. One is that moral statements, such as murder is wrong, are meaningful, but that they do not necessarily refer to objective truths, but rather to moral values that are true or false depending on factors and people. For example, murder is wrong is not an objective truth, but is rather wrong according to people, or according to different factors. This is what MOJOB calls subjectivism. But it doesn't end here. Then there is a perspective according to which moral statements, such as murder is wrong, are meaningful, but that they are all false. Because nothing is right or wrong, neither objectively nor subjectively. For example, if someone says murder is wrong, but then you say, no, that is false. Murder is neither wrong nor right. This is a form of moral skepticism, according to which there are no objective moral values, but there are also no subjective moral values, and nobody can say that something is right or wrong. This is already a third position, next to objectivism and subjectivism. Then there are other positions, very important ones, called moral non-cognitivism, according to which it doesn't make sense to talk about whether murder is right or wrong. Morals do not carry any inherent meanings. They are neither objectively true or false, nor subjectively true or false. According to some non-cognitive perspectives, for example, morals do not exist, good and evil do not exist. Our statements about how killing people is bad are merely expressions of our own feelings about murder. We are not making moral statements, we are only expressing our feelings, for example. According to a different view, morals do not exist, morals are meaningless, but we establish certain rules based on our own feelings and observations and prescribe them, acting as if they were true. You could now lean back and argue that that sounds like subjectivism, but according to that perspective, it is not subjectivism. And what matters is not what you think about it, what matters is that that perspective exists. So here are different perspectives next to Mohammed Hijab's either objectivism or subjectivism. There are no two options, there is no third option, there are many ways of looking at morality. And he doesn't even think we should have these discussions. He thinks if you are an atheist, then you cannot make moral judgments, which is extremely dumb. This is where we got to utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a worldview that is not just uniform, it's not one single thing, as Mohammed Hijab makes it look like. It is a moral theory that has many different forms. And according to this moral theory, this perspective, actions are not objectively or subjectively good or bad in and of themselves. And this is something very basic in utilitarianism, which is a topic that Mohammed Hijab claims to be an expert in.
I don't believe that there is inherent objective morality, which does not
objective morality. Sorry, I don't understand that.
I could, for example, argue that morality is completely based on utilitarianism, for example,
Yeah,
which is one example.
Jeremy Bentham, who's the founding father of utilitarianism, these individuals never said that it was objective. It's not meant to be an objective morality in that sense. So in other words, if you're pegging your moral value judgments on utilitarianism, you can't go and attack the Quran because you know why? You don't have an anchorage. You don't have an objective morality.
Now, in utilitarianism, good and bad is defined as whether something is useful, beneficial, or pleasurable, or harmful. Therefore, murder or rape are not evil. They are considered harmful, which is why they are wrong. Because according to this philosophy, actions are judged as bad or good depending on their consequences. For example, when we speak about child marriage, we figure out that child marriage is harmful to most humans. If everyone practiced child marriage, that would harm every child, which would be harmful to everybody, which is why child marriage is judged as wrong. Encouraging suicide is judged as wrong because it is harmful. It doesn't cause happiness to the people in question, let alone to most people. Rape is wrong. It is harmful because it harms women. It harms even the men who do it. It harms society. It harms the possible offspring. It harms the future, which is why rape is wrong. What we are doing here is we are not judging rape in and of itself as wrong. We are judging it as wrong because of its consequences. So here we don't actually have objective moral values as Mohammed Hijab wants to define them, but we have an objective moral value of the benefit as opposed to the harm. But Mohammed Hijab learns utilitarianism. He learns to cite and to read specific texts, but he doesn't understand a bit of it. In fact, what is very surprising is that Mohammed Hijab cannot even pronounce utilitarianism.
What?
At first I thought I shouldn't take an issue with this. It's probably just he forgets or it's his accent, whatever it is. But for him, it is not only saying a word wrong, it is saying a word wrong that he is supposed to be an expert on. Utilitarianism, which he calls utilitarianism.
The founding father of utilitarianism, who put forward utilitarianism? What's the definition of utilitarianism?
I'm your teacher, boy.
And then I noticed that he mistypes it in written form as well. Throughout our discussion, he mispronounced utilitarianism as utilitarianism every single time, while I did not. And I'm not the expert here, just saying. He is, according to himself.
On utilitarianism.
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 Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism.
Who is utilitarianism? Utilitarianism. You can't even answer that. Utilitarianism.
Utilitarian is no question.
Utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is on utilitarianism as well. Utilitarianism. The Quran has actually addressed utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. On utilitarianism is the name of the book. Utilitarianism. That utilitarianism is utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism.
Based on utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism.
Utilitarian liberal ethical scholars say utilitarianism. That's your seedbed. And since morality has crumbled, what have you got left?
Exactly. You are an idiot.
Literally. Yeah.
This is Mohammed Hijab's problem. He brags about reading things, he brags about learning, but what he does is to compulsively learn, to memorize without understanding properly what he learned.
I have done the training. Do you get it? Food and, you know, doing your thing and enjoying your time and whatever atheists do, yeah, and watching TV and Netflix. I've had to memorize stuff. I've had to read books. I was in a dark room reading stuff.
I don't know what his obsession with Netflix is, by the way.
You're sitting there watching Netflix. That's why you are where you are, you imbecile.
I mean, he's so ignorant that he even thinks and asserts that I must agree with John Stuart Mill on whatever he says about utilitarianism.
John Stuart Mill and Bentham, Jeremy Bentham, who's the founding father of utilitarianism, these individuals never said that it was objective.
It doesn't depend on individuals. This is not how it works. Utilitarianism is an idea. Utilitarianism is an idea. It doesn't mean that it has to abide by the ideas.
Who made the idea of utilitarianism? Who is the philosophical founding father of utilitarianism?
It's not like a religion that was started by this guy and is loyal to this guy, like Islam was started by the caravan robber and is loyal to whatever he said. They can differ. People can be utilitarian and disagree with John Stuart Mill or Bentham. John Stuart Mill had opinions about certain matters that are greatly in contradiction with what people nowadays think within utilitarianism. This is how philosophy works. This is how modern philosophy works. Yes, Mohammed Hijab, I can judge your morals, your system of child marriage and wife beating, and hating and fighting the disbelievers, and killing or expelling apostates. Whether you want to see an objective foundation for my criticism is entirely irrelevant. It has no meaning in the practical real world, because what I see is that I am a human. There are humans around us. We want to live together. We all have the will to live, to survive, to flourish. And over time, we see and decide that certain things are good and bad for us. We decide that wife beating is bad because it severely destroys women and destroys society, keeps society back, harms people. We can then change our minds and go toward a better future. Some people may not agree with that, but that doesn't matter at all. We simply have to correct them. And your objection that not everyone agrees with my morals and that I don't have a reasoning for my morals is completely besides the point. I explained my reasoning and this is how it goes. Whereas in your world, in your Islamic world, you cannot change your mind. You cannot change your moral values. You are stuck with what a 7th century desert guy prescribed, whether those ideas are good or bad. And that is what makes your religion harmful, outlandish, destructive, wrong, worthy of criticism, of intellectual deconstruction and destruction, like the destruction that you have experienced today, Mohammed Hijab. You know, I even feel bad having spent so much time on philosophy, which is completely besides the point, because the point actually was, is Islam the truth? You had one challenge, one chance to accept one challenge, and you refused that and ran into these charters. I even offered Mohammed Hijab the debate option again during our conversation. He rejected it once, he rejected it twice, and he rejected it a third time, making all kinds of different excuses. And then he started talking about how he's not afraid and he's not scared of death. He's ready to die.
Any Islamophobe challenges me in any way, if they challenge me conversationally, physically, in a ring, on the stage, I'm there. I get knocked out, I'm there. I look forward to death. If it wasn't for my mum and my sister, my family and so on, I have to look forward. No, I'm looking forward to death. I don't care about these things. I care about death. Do you get it? Wallahi, I'm a Muslim.
I could go on about Mohammed Hijab's mistakes, his dishonesty, his big blunders, but I believe we have seen enough. And believe me, I went through significant things that happened through our discussion and some other things. I didn't even go through most of what I had on my list about this guy. But to summarize everything, you can see that Mohammed Hijab offers a debate and then lies and escapes from that debate offer himself. Doesn't understand freedom of speech, a topic that he claims to be an expert on. Distorts and misrepresents science in the Quran, makes stupid arguments for science in the Quran, argues that there are early round earth Islamic scholars when there are no such scholars. Gives the worst arguments for a round earth in the Quran. Gives me a guy named Ibn Munada who doesn't even exist, who is in no way helpful to us. us. He lied for half an hour about apostasy. He believes in an Islamic state but is too cowardly to admit that. He fails to justify Muhammad's prophecies and drivels about how Muhammad prophesied STDs, encourages people to commit suicide, tells people to urinate on each other and to do gay sex and to give each other MOJOBs, makes rape implications and rape threats, harassment, targeted harassment, lies about me that I was an advocate of bestiality and incest because he has nothing real on me. He is completely ignorant and stupid on moral philosophy and doesn't understand the basics of the great philosophy which he claims to be an expert on, utilitarianism. What else can be said? My final message to Mohammed Hijab is not one of hate and anger and all that. Mohammed Hijab should calm down, sit down, reflect a little bit, look at himself, and understand that he's not a god. In his great craving for attention and admiration, in his desire to be so fantastic, so great, he creates himself a public image that doesn't really represent his true self. Maybe he should meditate, maybe he should go to a psychologist, a therapist, and get some insights about himself, because it doesn't look like he's very healthy in the way he thinks, in the way he acts against others. Encouraging such an individual and applauding him only makes him worse and makes look everyone else around him worse. Clearly, if you look at it, if you remove all the noise, all the bragging, all the tough guy attitude, you see that the mask falls off and there is nothing, absolutely nothing valuable behind it. There is ignorance, there is a lack of reason, and there is so much dishonesty. He is so bad at defending Islam. This is also how he defends Islam in his own head, to himself, and it looks like he is severely limited in how he thinks. He should really get rid of those limits and think Islam through once more. Look how stupid it sounds, how weak it looks. So weak it makes him present such a weak defense, such weak apologetics. Mohammed Hijab, I am not someone who brags. I don't think very highly of myself. I don't want to act like a tough guy. But today I have to say, you have been destroyed. Not necessarily by me. All I had to do was to simply look at you and fact check everything, and look at information and present that information to you. You have been destroyed by me just opening everything up and showing it to the public. You should be embarrassed of yourself, and so should be all the others, because this list of mistakes makes you look horribly inauthentic, horribly incompetent. No wonder Mohammed Hijab doesn't want to have these debates. Thanks for watching. I will be back and continue focusing on my path, on deconstructing and criticizing Islam. Oh, and one more thing. Since Mohammed Hijab didn't dare to discuss the topic, to debate the topic, is Islam the truth? I will simply do it myself then. Thanks everyone for watching. I have to go rest a little bit. Have a good day and stay away from Islam. Oh yeah, Mohammed Hijab, you're finished.
I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. Believe me, a lot of the enemies of Islam would be very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. Just like Apostate was very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. Many of them would be very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. Don't pretend to be our teacher. You have nothing on us. You know nothing. Don't ever come and step up to us for life. All of you. And I know you're listening to me. I'm shaking. You need to use the toilet now. I know you're a teacher, boy. Believe me, a lot of the enemies of Islam would be very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. Just like Apostate was very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. Many of them would be very scared. I'm your teacher, boy. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. I'm your teacher, boy. Many of them would be very scared. I'm your teacher boy. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? I tell you, lose faith. It's better for you. It's better for you. Sorry, I just got a bit passionate there. But make sure you're taking your notes. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that you got from that. I'm your teacher boy. I'm your teacher boy.